Laser animation has been one of my passions and great fascinations since I started working with laser in, well, 1989 it was. The fact that you can actually draw with light was something that just intrigued me since the first time I saw it. And today I'm very excited to be talking to a new friend of mine, Pieter Ruysch, who is a professional laser animator based in Netherlands. Pieter, welcome to Argon TV.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's great to be here. I mean, laser animation is kind of my life, you know, so to get to talk about it is very exciting for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, how did you initially get into lasers? Because it's a kind of unique area for people to move into.
Correct. Yeah, I was still in high school. I was about 16 years old. I'm not 27, so you could do the math on that. I was browsing the early days of YouTube, and I saw a laser show, not a beam show, an animation show of an actual person that was within my country. And this was at the time, you know, I'm kind of a geeky person. I'm into these Japanese animation stuff, and it was the first time I heard there were gatherings for these kind of things. So I went to one of these conferences just to see what it was like. You know, I was curious with some people of high school, and this person that I saw on YouTube, I was talking with. YouTube had a messaging system back then, and I messaged him. I said, like, this is amazing. How does this work? And by pure coincidence, this same person I actually ended up meeting there, and we got along very well. And this was the time I got to see my first a laser graphics animation. This was the first time seeing a laser. It was the first thing I saw, and I just the contrast, you know, the sharpness, everything. It was just beautiful. This was when the blue laser diodes were not very cheap yet. And most people were using the UV diodes from you know, the Blu-ray laser diodes. And he had his laser projector propped up on a small bed, like just barely at head level. You know, you had to like duck to not get into it, so it's a bit shoddy, but it was really great to see it very up close, and I wanted to get into it. And well, I found out it was pretty expensive. So my first software I saw was Phoenix Laser Show, and so I actually had some schematics to me, and back then we had electronics shops, and he said, yeah, you can build something yourself, kinda. So I tried, and I failed. So I decided, hey, you know, instead of making the equipment, why don't I just make content and then send it to him, and he sent me a video back, and then I get some gratification of seeing something work, you know? And so I kept doing that for a while. Obviously, the first times it just didn't work. And then I just kept trying. I found a forum where laser enthusiasts gather, and it's called Photon Lexicon. It still exists. It's great. But yeah, so I decided to post my work, and I actually asked for feedback. And eventually I found a way to make 3D laser animation without owning laser software, which is a program called Illustrate. It's for 3ds Max. And in high school, I was already playing around with 3ds Max a lot. I wanted to make games. I wanted to make robotics. So 3D modeling seemed like a logical step to me. And yeah, so what happened was eventually my content started to work. Not great, but it started to work. So I kept sending more and more. I got feedback again. I started posting it on the forums, and people started giving feedback. And eventually, William Bennett himself, being very active at the time, commented as well and said it was kind of cool, but they've been doing that for years. And I was like, well, what can you do? I'm 16 years old. I'd love to try your software, but I don't have the money for it. And they said, yeah, well, you need the hardware, so trying it doesn't make sense. At the time, you needed the QM2000, you know, the big laser controller. Yeah, so I just kept going. I started doing a little bit of programming and make some small modifications of other people's programs, like a tracer and stuff like that. And eventually Bill got interested and made me a proposition. And he said, listen, if you can prove this is really you doing this and making this, and let's talk. So I emailed them, and we talked. And I made them a demo animation. Wasn't great, but it was good enough for them. And yeah, they wanted me to help out with their trade show. So they made me an offer of sending me a QM2000 Pro, like straight from the start. I was amazed, like, wow, like what an offer. Like, you know, I'm 16 years old, and This is like the top of the line at the time, you know? So obviously I was a bit skeptical, but hey, I did it anyway and took the offer. Didn't hear anything for months. And then Christmas came and I was at my grandpa and I get a phone call and there's like an urgent package. It needs to be delivered now. It can't wait. And so the delivery guy decided to drive all the way to my grandpa from my own house. And yeah, it was the QM2000, you know, in the .NET box too. So yeah, I started just messing around without a projector at the time, just making content, just trying out stuff, and getting feedback, and just learning the ins and outs of the LE2000 program, the older laser show program. And yeah, eventually I bought a projector from some other guy. The blue laser diode just started dropping in price, so people started dumping their older blue DPSS laser combinations for quite a lot less. So I bought my first RGB projector. Straight on, I had RGB. It was amazing. And that's kind of my start. I started making content every day, and just keep going like through 7 days a week, and, you know, just constantly churning through. And yeah, eventually, you know, I did that trade show, went okay. And I went to Salim, the first, you know, the big laser gathering in, I think it's in Charlotte in America. And yeah, I got to do an internship at Pangolin for a little while. And this was about when Beyond was on the horizon. You know, I was already 18 then, by then. And yeah, from there on, I've been doing freelance work. And that's kind of how my career took off.
Well, that's really interesting. That's a great story.
Yeah.
And I think the first time you see a laser is a very important day in your life. I remember the first time I saw a laser, it was like, I've never seen anything like this. And I think it affects people in different ways, but, you know, some people get it, some people don't get it. You obviously got it. I got it. And it's interesting you talk about the QM2000. I still have one of those and it still works.
I still have two. I don't want to sell mine. It's for me, it's like a relic, you know, if like, hey, this is where I start. These are my roots. I don't want to let go of that. You know, I think it's important when you're getting a bit older, you kind of appreciate that, you know, it's start of your career. It's a big part of your life.
Yeah.
And if you let go of that, you let go of a part of your past. I don't think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah. And I think it's great that you had that internship with Bill Bennett and Pangolin. That's an amazing opportunity. So
it was
the shows that they put out on that they give for free. Are any of those shows yours?
No, actually. So what when I was interning at Pangolin, what I did was together with Singularity Arts, these were the guys that made the Revelation show.
Yep.
We worked on concepts for the Beyond logo, the one, you know, with the text with the globe that you see on the splash screen, and it was also in the booklets at the time. And I was also working with sorry, I'm really bad with names. Alexander Stampel, who made Beyond 3D. We were working together on just giving like feedback back and forth, and he did most of the work. Let's be honest. But I made some advices on the colors of the interface because it was really bright. It was like a quick show white, and I was working late nights. I still do, and it just hurted my eyes. I felt my eyes hurting every time. So I said, like, hey, can we make this really dark? So that's kind of where that came from. And then I started writing the manuals when I was at the office, and that's kind of main thing I did. So it's not that much, but yeah, most things I submitted to Pangolin's cloud and stuff like that were stills, and that's still, I don't do it as much anymore. I've been thinking about it, but it's, you know, it's become my job, so it's a bit hard with free content. It's also time, and it's also motivation, and it's a lot, you know, you enjoy it so much, but you spend so much time on it that it really puts a large strain on you. So you kind of drain motivation, not in a negative way, but it takes energy from you to make stuff. And it takes a lot of work to make something that looks good. And that's just the way it is. It's not something that the tools are being faulted at. It's just kind of, you know, good results take time. Very simple.
Correct. And are you a traditional animator, like a cell frame animator, or are you using computer graphic animation?
So I studied animation for a while, but I couldn't really fit well in the whole education system. I was already doing freelance work. For me, it felt a little bit weird to go back into studying. So I dropped out actually. But I did do hand drawing animation for a while, but I'm a very clumsy person. So these paper piles just keep stacking up, and they start getting mixed through, and then suddenly your 10th frame is at the bottom of the pile, and your 5th frame is at the middle of the pile. And it becomes a mess where you don't like storing the cupboards full of paper anymore. So I was very happy to go back to digital. But no, I'm mostly digital. I sketch in a program called Paint Tool Sci. It's basically like a Photoshop, but it's only for a tablet drawing. And I used to do flash animation a little bit here and there, which also is useful for laser. But actually, primarily, it was 3D for most things that I did, because when it comes to bulk creation of content, 3D makes sense. I mean, deadlines in the entertainment industry are quite short. So most of the time for large animation sequences, you go through the steps of preparing a 3D scene, and then you could make a long winded animation using that one character, one scene, and it saves you time on a bigger project. Or you take a still frame and you morph it, you make the eyes move and open and close, you make it wiggle a bit back and forth. For most clients, that's okay. That's for them, that's enough movement to convey there's something alive. It's not looking at a still image. So I'd say mostly 3D actually, and 2D stills. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I first started, which was when I first started doing animation with laser. Was about 1990.
Oh wow!
And
yeah.
we were working with I think it was a company called Omicron from Germany, if I remember. They had a program, and they brought out Hidden Line. We're like, wow, Hidden Line.
Hidden Line. Yeah.
that was the new thing there. It was very incredible. So, what software are you actually using?
For animation, so I use Adobe Flash CS6. Why CS6? I'm not a fan of the Creative Cloud situation. I'm sure a lot of people would agree. I use Photoshop CS6. I use that Paint Tool Sci I just mentioned before. I use 3ds Max. And I, of course, use Beyond itself with their LC Flash, LC Max, stuff like that. And I use, for example, Photoshop for textures on 3D models, or even in the past, I used to use it to actually make a background of a gradient line, because making gradients in the older software is quite difficult. You would you make a gradient in Photoshop, and then you color pick from the background to make your gradient in LE2000. That obviously is, I'm glad it's part of the past. But yeah, these are my main tools. And then obviously I have some exotic tools like some motion capture tools that I'm now using, but I'm still experimenting with more in production, like how well is it worth doing, because with character animation, that's already a very difficult thing on its own in 3D. And then a motion capture, you need to really set up your character correctly for it to work well. So there's a very niche situation within a niche. So these are tools I don't end up using that often. Yeah.
Incredible. And I was actually scrolling through your Facebook page earlier, and I was looking at some of your work, and I must say it's pretty outstanding. But I noticed that you don't just do animation, that you also do beam shows and other types of shows.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I do both. I mean, beam show is animation in a sense as well. Of course, it's more also about, I think, about color, color vision, because that goes beyond animation. Coloring can be a different profession, even in the animation industry. But yeah, no, I do beam shows. Of course, obviously, I do like to see beams as well, or both. But like when you see like a show like Anthony Garcia's work, for example, you just want to make something, you want to make a beam show, and people still choose that over most things. Corporate clients would love animation because it can tell a lot, but most people in general would go for beam shows, obviously, because you get that depth. You're inside the beams, or you're inside a cone, or whatever. Or even if it's above you, it doesn't matter. You see that depth, that really encapsulates you. But yeah, for me, just animation just makes sense. I mean, I like cartoons. I actually, despite me wanting to be like a mechanical designer before I discovered laser, there's something about making things move and making it seem come alive is just really mesmerizing. You never get enough of it,
Well, that's fantastic. And you sound like you could talk about this for hours and hours.
Yeah.
And in a moment, we're going to actually take a look at some of your work, which I'm looking forward to. So I'm here with Pieter Ruysch right now. He's a professional laser animator, and we'll be back in just a moment. So welcome back. This is Tim Bennett from Argon TV, and I'm really excited because I'm being joined by Pieter Ruysch, who's a professional laser animator, and we're going to take a look at some of his work now. So
Yeah, excellent.
Peter, give us a tour.
Sure. All right. So what I'll do is I'll right now switch my camera to the video camera, so you can also see laser output. So here's some graphics I made. So for example, I'll show you something that really people find unique about my graphics. So I'll open this frame up here, and you'll notice something really strange when it opens up. It looks really distorted, as you can see. It doesn't look right, I think. So when I click Show It Now on this, you can see that the projection, I'm not sure, I can't see my own camera feed, but it looks great on the camera, I think. If you can confirm, I obviously can't see my own camera. Yeah, so I'm actually using a special technique to make the laser actually never reach its destination of projection, basically. So you know, when a laser is a two set of galvos that are steering a laser dot, and it never keeps up entirely. In fact, graphics usually tend to distort.
Correct.
And I actually make use of that distortion to make my graphics more efficient. So here you can actually see that graphic on my screen turns out to be a really good looking graphic. So this is like how I make complicated 2D frames that people are seeing on Facebook, and they're like wondering like, hey, how can you display so much? Then basically this is how. So another thing I have loaded in here is a 3D example. So I have here loaded a sequence of a dolphin swimming, and you can see there it comes, and I will just delete that little fish in the back there. I forgot to remove it. I just rendered it out really quickly so we can get a real-time preview, which is, I think, not working properly, but that doesn't matter. There, cool. So let me just press a few buttons here. There, okay, so this is how I make my 3D animation. It's for example, here's a swimming dolphin, and you can see it's like following a path of lines and splines and stuff like that. And you know, sometimes when your deadline is very short, just being very creative about how you make your animation can save you a lot of time. Like you can cheat, you know, like for example, a dolphin doesn't have to have a whole internal structure. You can make it distort to a path, you know, stuff like that. There's in 3D animation a lot of tricks to do one thing, and that's what makes it great, and that's what makes it so difficult, because one person tells you this and one person tells you that, and then you get confused. So it's really hard to demonstrate it too. But yeah, for example, I have here a show that's actually using this frame. I'll just open it right here. It's this one. You've probably seen it with the beam brush. So let me just scroll here. So this is a part of my show. Let me disable my sound here. So here you can see that 3D animation that we saw earlier, where you can see like fish swimming around, and you can see the dolphin coming in, you know. This is that one 3D section you just saw, and every 3D scene is its own project file within the 3D software, and you render that out, and then you put it in the timeline, and you build up a whole section of scenes and frames, and that's how you create an entire animation show. I hope I'm not going too quick here, by the way.
No, this is absolutely fascinating. And I actually watched this show earlier today, and it's a very beautiful demonstration of not just laser animation, but also the beam brush. That I actually talked to William Bennett about beam brush a few weeks ago, and just to actually see it in use here is very interesting indeed.
Correct. Yeah. The thing is with the show, I actually made it in I think about 4 days, which is, I guess that's quite quick. But yeah, no, definitely with this technology, especially, it's still early in, but there's basically my intention of the whole show was to show people what you can do, but it's not everything. Obviously, far from it. But that was my whole intention really for this entire show. So yeah, I'll show you something else. For example, I also do art exhibitions, and they're kind of strange on its own. So for example, I'll look for a project file on my other monitor right now, because there's tons. You know, it's like they call it "kill your darlings" in the animation industry, where you have a lot of good stuff, but you got to narrow down. So you got to pick, and even then, sometimes you don't pick the right thing still. let me just see here. I
What,
have
what I find fascinating about this, just before you move on, is the show that you're projecting right now. This is done with one laser.
Yes, yes, and
Because
it's only running
traditionally,
at. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
traditionally, as you said, we're limited by, you know, like 1,000 points or 1,200 points.
Correct.
You have so much going on in one scene. I'm fascinated with that. Is this something that you taught yourself, or
Yes.
wow.
I definitely did it all by myself. It's a matter of time, and that's when you find things. You have an off day and nobody's giving you some work for that day, and you're like, hey, I'm just gonna play around. Or hey, you see something cool online, and you're like, how would this translate to laser? Or how would I make this work? And then you just play around, and you fail or you succeed, and that's when you find out things that are really unique to you. And during that time, you also develop your own style. It might be really edgy. It might be really good. It might be really funny. You know, that's up to you. That's kind of reflects your personality in a way, and also the way you learn. Like, for example, this is an old project I think it's a bird flying. I can probably play it. It will probably be very choppy. Oh, it's fine. But yeah, you can see a bird flying here. And for example, this was made in a rush, but I had it to make eyes, and I was like, well, I don't have time to make good eyes. So what I did was I saw an online animation of someone making a Pac-Man thing. And so what this is, it's just a sphere, for example, inside the eye that that basically closes on itself. So if I, for example, go in here, I can close them like this. See, they're actually just spheres closing. But the great thing is when you're looking at from the side, you can't really see that as a sphere. For example, it's all about tricks and cheating to make it translate well into laser. So if I render this frame out here and I just drag it over to the other monitor so you can see it. So from here, it looks awful, but I am not ever showing that direction. You know, here looks terrible. But if you just move it to the side entirely, let me just do that. You cannot make out it's a sphere anymore that much.
Correct.
So there's lots of tricks to do one thing right, and this is one of them. But yeah, no, this is all self-taught. It's all just through experimentation. Obviously, there are some tutorials, but you know, 3D animation and general animation on its own can be a very complicated a thing. There's many ways to do things the right way. There's many things to do things the wrong way, and sometimes you want to do things the wrong way because it gives a specific aesthetic. So you know, there's lots of mixed opinions on how things should be done. And the same thing counts for laser animation or laser graphic content creation. You know, everybody has their own way of doing it. And so this is kind of my way of doing it. So yeah, so what I usually do is I blend 2D and 3D frames together because sometimes 2D saves you time, sometimes 3D saves you time. For example, I have here, it's a Dutch painter called Van Gogh. It's a painter that in a very long time ago, he's very famous in the Netherlands. It's the famous painter that cut his one ear off and stuff like that. It's quite a crazy story. But for example, here I have a face of him where he's moving around and looking around. And this was made in like maybe 2 hours, 1.5 hours, which is quite short if I'm honest. But it's not actually 3D, but he's still looking around. For example, here I'm using that thing you mentioned, the hidden line removal thing. Back in before you had the 3D conversion software, you had a way to draw 3D frames, and I found out a way to do it myself. So I made this head wrapped around a sphere, and because of that, I can make it turn left and right a little bit. That was good enough for me. You know, when you have a deadline, sometimes necessity pushes you to be creative to finish a product, because there's a difference between trying to do it the best way possible and then not delivering at all to delivering something that's quite good and actually delivering. So sometimes there's choices from necessity, but sometimes if you have all the time in the world, it's actually not a good thing, because you constantly keep changing and changing it and changing it. You'll never finish it, basically. So what I actually like about our industry is that we have really hard deadlines that really pushes us to make it happen, I think.
Yes, and that's actually one of the questions I was going to ask you. If someone does have a project, what kind of deadlines are we talking about? How long does it take you to put something together? And I know it's difficult to actually give an exact answer, but how long roughly does a client need with you?
Usually about a week or half. Sometimes more. It really depends how ambitious they are and what money they have to spend. Because it's not only a matter of time; it's sometimes also a matter of money. Yeah, I mean, with a graphic, still it can be as little as a few hours. It can be as little as a day. I usually tend to ask for a day because if something comes up, sometimes someone gets sick or something, you still have that little bit of stretch. It's very good to have. You obviously always want to deliver. So, but yes, I have done projects where they asked like, hey, can you deliver in half a day or can you deliver in 3 hours? And then I would deliver a graphic in 3 hours. I would really quickly sit on top of that and deliver on time. But yeah, no, I have had made, for example, a graphic for deadmau5 that, for example, it looked simple in nature, but it was actually, it took me 2 days to make. And it was just an animated graphic. So let me actually see if I can find this. I probably can. So for example, this is an actual thing I made for deadmau5. And it looks like it's just a still frame, but it's definitely not. But this one took 2 days to make. And on the laser, it looks flickery, but it's actually made through 3 projectors, so that explains. But this is a BPM-based animation that you would load in a frame on your workspace, and it would make things move, and things would like flash around. It doesn't seem to work right now, but it's what it is. But yeah, no, usually a week is the short answer.
Okay, and how do you like it to happen? Is it best if the client comes to you with an idea, or do they come to you and say, "Look, we have no idea what we want to do. What can you suggest?" Which is the way it normally works.
So I usually, because the client's paying for it, you want to realize his vision. And usually a client, even if they have no idea, they usually have a vision somewhere, and that's what you kind of want to get out, So usually I prefer for them to have an idea, because that narrows down the whole troubleshooting and choice, because that costs you time too. That's essentially wasted labor, which for some, is justifiable, but for most people, they rather have you spend your time on making something than you working back and forth, constantly fixing something that you shouldn't have to fix. So in that case, I'll take an advisory stance and say, hey, listen, I usually know this looks good, and I'm trying to see what I usually ask them the direct question: what are you promoting? What are you trying to do? What kind of audience do you think is going to come? Questions that allow me to advise for a client, and then I try to convince them that the idea works, because then I can do my thing, and if you just start making stuff without the client really approving of anything, you end up doing this whole process of making something, preparing something, you present it to them, and then they say like, we don't like it. So you essentially wasted so many days for something they will not even take, and for them, something they're not taking is usually something in their mind, obviously, is something they haven't paid for, and they're not paying for, because that's not what they wanted. So I usually rather spend my time making something that I'm more confident about that they would actually like and have. And I usually try to talk to a client or talk to my client that works with that client to make them enthusiastic of an idea, and then have them stand behind that idea by showing them little previews of pictures or work in progress things, and then see how their reaction is. If their reaction is very mild and not very enthusiastic, that you're going the wrong direction. So I think feeling the waters is a usually good thing to do. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this is laser animation at a depth that I've never seen before. It's very fascinating for me, very unique, and clearly something way above my pay grade in animation. And it's absolutely beautiful. I'm really intrigued as to how you put all this together. Very nice.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like the thing is that there's so many, the whole graphics thing with laser is that it's not just doing beam shows anymore. It's literally like you merging multiple sections of an industry. Like you're mixing the movie and animation industry with laser, and these industries are probably even way larger than ours. So it's just that there's never enough to learn, really. Like even I consider I'm still learning, and when people say it's beautiful, it's great, I then look at the other industries, how they're doing on the animation field, and I'm like, well, we still have a long way to go. And obviously I still have a long way to go. For example, on character animation in 3D, I feel like I'm still very early in. So for example, this is a thing I did with Adult Swim. This looks great. I mean, this is like 2D animation at its finest, really. It looks like you're watching a cartoon, and you should see it on the screen because it's a 6 laser graphics projection, so it will never look very good on one laser, obviously. But yeah, this is like watching an actual cartoon in laser. Took me a month to make with a team of Adult Swim, and took me so little. I basically the last 2 days I didn't sleep for about 3 days, and then I also did the show, and I can tell you how ill that can make you of working that hard. But then again, it's also so gratifying when you're like, the storm, the calm after the storm. You're done, and people are so happy, and you're like, wow, this was all worth it in the end. And I feel like that's something in our industry that's really a strong thing. Like with a movie, you don't actually get to meet the crowd that gets to see your show. But with laser shows and animation, you get to be there usually, and then you get the direct response from your crowd, and it makes you so enthusiastic, and it gives you like another drive to wanting to do even better and even better, and even like keep like setting the stakes higher and higher, and you become really overcritical of your work. So actually, if I'm honest, like with most of my animation work, I'm actually never happy with it. But I feel like that's a good thing, because it keeps you, if you're pleased with what you have, that's when you stop learning, in my opinion.
Yep, and you're clearly, I mean, the way you talk about it, you're clearly very passionate about it, and I think it's kind of normal that an artist is never happy with his own work and always wants something better. But I think you made an interesting comment just now about how the technology hasn't really changed that much over the last few years when it comes to like the scanners and the lasers themselves.
Yes.
And I do believe, and I agree with you entirely, that laser animation still has a long way to go, and I think it's going to be really exciting what comes in the future.
Yeah, I agree. For sure. Yeah. For now, like, I'm really happy that Beam Brush came. I was really unexpected for it to pick up again. I'm also super happy that Pangolin's been investing in better scanners, digital ones, because there's with graphics, there's a whole can of worms when it comes to how graphics should be made, and should graphics look this distorted as on my pictures, or should we have them should we have them look good on screen and then have the computer figure it out for us? That's kind of what people always been saying, and there's many programmers who've tried and done it, but it's never been as good as doing it yourself. I think there's maybe some artistical merit behind some choices when it comes to even optimizing your graphics, because, for example, I actually make some of my line fades actually intentionally with an optimization, not actually fading the intensity of the ending of the lines. I actually use the lasers speeding up as a way to reduce the intensity as well. So that's something a algorithm doesn't really do for you, or most of them that I have seen don't do. But yeah, I think like there, for example, with the yield test pattern, there's a lot of mixed opinions on that as well. Like, hey, should we tune to this pattern? And is a scanner that doesn't do the yield test pattern at this size is still a 40K scanner, or is it not? There's a whole can of worms there with scan speeds and stuff. And for example, you probably see now on my screen that I work with 30 kbps. And it's not because I can't run higher. It's because the majority of people still in the industry use 30 kbps. And it's a bit of a shame, but for me, it's like kind of like a game developer. You choose the largest portion of the market, the majority of people that run a PS5, but if only 5 people have an Xbox, you would obviously go for the PS5, so even if the other one is better, it doesn't matter as long as the biggest amount of people are on that other side. And I'm kind of hoping that switch to the 60K or 40 or 50K starts happening, but I don't think it will happen anytime soon, as we're seeing it now. People are pleased with the 30.
Yeah, well, I'm fascinated, and you definitely have a fan out of me with this. Very interesting. I could sit and watch you for hours with this.
Yeah, no worries.
Yep. Anyway, this is Tim Bennett. I am enthralled with the conversation I've been having so far with Pieter Ruysch. We've been talking about laser animation, and we'll be back in just a moment. So welcome back. It is Tim Bennett here in ArgonTV. I'm joined today. I'm very excited because Pieter Ruysch is here with me. He's a professional laser animator. We've just been taking a look at some of his laser animation. I'm a big fan. You know, you got a new fan here with me. I love the way you put it all together. And having worked with laser animation for so long, this is totally different concept of thinking about how to make animation. But a little bird told me you don't just do animation, that you also do animatronics as well.
Correct. Yeah. Obviously before laser, I wanted to do mechanical design because I really like, for example, if you ever heard of a pick and place machine, you know, those little suction cups that put like things really quickly on a circuit board. I just love the design behind those things. I love the fact that you can make things come alive, just like animation. This is like physical, you know, you can touch it. It's like really there. And that's something that goes beyond the borders of the screen. So performance robotics, mostly called animatronics, is what I really like. I used to watch puppetry movies from Jim Henson when I was young as well, so that kind of helped. So that's kind of actually what I wanted to pursue before I started with laser. So that's kind of what I do as a side hobby. So I've been learning lots of things from making actual shells of skulls. You know, like this is an actual we call it an inner skull. And this is like what you put inside a robot, and then normally you put a skin on top of it, which you make out of foam. This is, for example, a skin, a template, basically. So what you would do is you would take a big slab of clay, and then you take a wire and you cut slices off it, and you put the clay slices on it, and the thickness of that clay determines the skin width. You would basically put another mold on top of it, and then you basically pour like a sort of gel in there called foam latex, and you bake that in the oven like a cake, and that would make a robotic skin, for example. And then, for example, I had someone who worked on Ghostbusters and Lord of the Rings to make me eyes, and they were too small, but he made me some really amazingly realistic eyes. They definitely, without the veins, they look very cool. But yeah, for example, I used, for example, silicon caulking at first to make ears because it's expensive, and I wanted to do it cheap. Obviously, it didn't work so well, so I put that aside. But yeah, eventually I even made what now completely fell apart. I made a robotic jaw, which now is just a mess of things that I need to fix. But it was a jaw of a head, and I probably don't have the top of the head here, no. But this basically jaw, and you put this little coupling on there, and it would move the jaw up and down, and then it was on a platform where the jaw could shift left and right, up and down. Let me see if I can move it without breaking it. I don't think I can. No, I can't. But yeah, so I made all that kind of mechanics of wood, of fiberglass, and stuff like that to still pursue that dream a little bit in the comfort of my own home without any pressure of anybody. So I think it's good to do like something completely different when you're working so hard on animation, which takes a lot of time, because it allows you to step away from the screen. And I feel like if you do another thing on your computer, you're still behind that screen. You're still sitting on that chair. So it's not really good for your health, both mentally and physically, I think. So this is why I am actually very happy that I have such a hands-on side hobby, basically. But yeah, I don't have much of the stuff here laying here. It's mostly in my shed, because if I would have all this stuff here, I wouldn't have any space to walk in my room, I think. So I actually did approach some people in the industry, some animatronics specialists, because I earn money with laser. I money to invest in learning something like this, where I pay for other people's time to ask questions to. I would like make a page of questions, and I would ask them because their time is very expensive. So yeah, that's kind of how I started learning, and then just experimenting and failing a lot. I bet with this you fail even more than laser, because it's so, it's like when you do one thing, you have to, for example, cast something. If you make a mistake, you have to start all over again. You have to buy all the materials all over again. And those materials are not cheap at all. So learning this is a very expensive thing compared to learning something with software.
Yeah, amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. And I think it's, you know, we have a fantastic job. Yeah, we get to play with lasers and toys and all sorts of things. Other
Yes.
people go to offices, and this is what we do.
Clock in and clock out, and I don't like that. I mean, it might be a sense of comfort. I don't know, but to me, it's not comforting at all. It feels a bit like you're on a real path and you're just going the same way every time.
Yeah.
For me, it's like with laser, because it's so diverse. So not all of these things, but some of these things can actually be translated to, you know, to your work. For example, some things are multifunction. For example, I wanted to capture animation for these robotics, so I looked into motion capture, and then I was like, well, I make character animation for laser too, although not as often, but I do. But hey, why not buy a suit also for laser show animation? And I've only used it, I think, twice. I've never posted it in terms of a laser animation. But I've actually used it on a show, and it was great because it made me have a deadline that was same day, and I made an entire animated Christmas show in literally a day from the comfort of my hotel room, just capturing it all with a suit on and walking through the hallways and stuff. And people probably thought I was nuts because I was wearing like a suit with like lights flashing and wires coming from me, and it was like a black spandex kind of thing, like a black covering suit. You know, it looked really strange. But yeah, no, for example, here, I actually was going to show it, but I ended up not doing it, is I actually have a motion capture glove here. Right here is hard to see, but it's a glove with sensors woven into it. And if you put it on, you can control every knuckle of your finger in software as well. So you could literally capture your hand motion exactly the way it is in real life. Stuff
I
like
don't know
that.
if you remember, some time ago, Pangolin used to have a product called Glove Puppet.
Yes, I've talked about it to them as well, very briefly though, where they had a demo video on their old website of I think it was VR Puppeteer, something like that, and I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
But I was actually kind of saddened that nobody ever picked further up on it. You know, that's kind of where it left and stayed. And you know, obviously Beyond has had Connect, but to me, Connect doesn't feel like it's cool, but it feels very hacky. It doesn't feel like professional industry, in my opinion. It feels like a little gimmick, you know, you put up for your friends, and it's like, hey, that's kind of funny. And obviously, I might be wrong on that because there's been some really interesting things with the Connect, obviously. But yeah, this really high end of motion capture with laser, it hasn't really shown its face at all, and it's probably because of the steep price, but also probably because the fact that you need to know how to use this and how to deploy it, and you know, you need to take care of the equipment. It's very fragile. For example, this, if I just pull the glove off, I could intentionally break it. So I have to like carefully inch it off of my hand, and I have to wear like a protective inner glove because of sweating, you know, stuff like that. It's, yeah, like right here, this thing is an inner glove that you would wear inside of it. So it's yeah, I think this is kind of a thing I want to grow in the industry right now. You know, character animation. It's one of the things that I'm still learning, and it's something that normally you have different in gaming design. For example, you have different departments just for one character. You have a character modeler, then you have someone that makes the topology. That's like the structure of the model that allows it to move properly on joints and stuff like that. And then you have someone who textures it, like basically paints it. And then you have someone who skins it, which is basically like putting a skeleton inside of it and making the control rigs for the entire character. And these are different professions, and I'm trying to do it myself. It's very overwhelming, let's just say it like that. And I do want to learn it though, so I'm not going to stop on that. But it's something that's taking me years, and it's still
absolutely amazing. I really love what you're doing, and I'm equally fascinated with the whole concept of laser animation as you are, but you have gone to a whole different degree. Now, if people want to get in touch with you to have work done, what's the best way for them to contact you?
I think my email or my Facebook. So my email is Peter, that's Peter, at laser content. So that's one word, laser with an S. I hope not a Z, please no. Lasercontent.com. That's the best way to contact me. And on obviously my Facebook, Pieterjan Ruysch, Ruysch, is another way to do it. what else? Yeah, I mean, some people contact me through Twitter, but I personally, it's more personal than it is work. So, but it's my old username from the distant past. It's MasterPJ55. So those will be the ways to contact me, I think.
Okay, well,
The
I
best
will
ways.
definitely put the links to your email and to your Facebook in the description beneath this video so that people
Sure.
can easily contact you. And I really want to thank you for being here today and spending your time showing us what you do. As I say, I've said 3 or 4 times now, I'm fascinated with it. I think you're doing an absolutely incredible job.
Thank you.
And you know, as I was searching through your videos today, you have some really outstanding quality videos then.
I actually, on my YouTube, I think most of the actual really quality stuff are actually hidden because of the fact that they're for individual clients, and the clients are like, oh, I can't share that. That's just for me, you know. It's like, so I feel like I'm holding back a lot more things on that people even think
Yeah.
that they're seeing.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Peter, for being here with us today on Argon TV. I've really enjoyed talking to you and seeing what you do, and I'm sure we'll be talking again in the near future. Thank you very much.
Yeah.